Schools Work podcast, a podcast for everyone in education. This show is brought to you by the Southern Regional Education Board. At SREB, we believe that every school has the potential to be great. Whatever you do in the school, whatever your job may be, let's talk about things that make schools work.
The first year teaching blues are over.
They are.
It only goes up. It only goes uphill.
That's what they keep saying.
Did you learn anything that you've implemented?
I went to a classroom management meeting thing at RESA, or not RESA. What's it? I don't know. Anyway, I went and she taught me to do a little competition in my classes for the rougher crowds where it's like student versus teacher. And they get points when they're behaving correctly, and I get points when they're not behaving correctly. And then I take a total of those points, and at the end of the day, it could be like free. All those points go to like free time on Friday or something. So that was cool. I did implement that.
I like that. That's awesome. You know, kids love a good competition.
Yep, especially when it comes to beating me. They try.
How do we help teachers stay in our schools, thrive in our schools, and become amazing teachers in our schools? My name's Daniel Rock. I'm a senior instructional coach at SREB. This is the Making Schools Work podcast. And today we're going to explore how two teachers collaborated to help build a thriving and successful new teacher in Burke County. SREB has a teacher induction framework, and our framework has been designed through years of research, both research of the literature as well as action research. Part of that research was a grant, and we call it the GREAT Grant. And these two teachers we're going to talk to were part of that grant. To help introduce this project is Juliana Coleman from Jefferson County, Alabama, also known as Birmingham, Alabama, is the city there. She was a science teacher, a science coordinator, and has been an instructional coach with SREB for many years. And she was one of the project managers and one of the coordinators on this grant. Hello, Juliana. How are you today?
I'm great, Daniel. How are you today?
Oh, I'm thrilled because you're here with me.
Excellent.
Tell us, what does GREAT stand for?
GREAT stands for the Georgia Residency for Educating Amazing Teachers.
And tell us what the grant was. What were the components of this project?
We worked with people who wanted to become middle grades teachers, that's grades 4 through 8, in science and or math in the state of Georgia. They did a year-long residency. We partnered with Georgia College, State, and University to get them a master's degree in a year, and then they did a 1-year residency with a master teacher.
And the goal of this podcast episode is not to learn about the GREAT Grant because it's over. The goal of this episode is to learn about what makes a great mentoring experience for a new teacher so that new teachers, 1, thrive and are amazing teachers, and that 2, they stay teachers. And I guess 3, they stay teachers in our school, right? We've hired them, we've trained them, we've got them all their stuff. Like, how do we make sure that this great teacher stays and doesn't go somewhere else or leave the profession? So to talk about that, we have a mentee and mentor. Let's bring them in. With us today is Jillian Degan, and who is the mentee, the newer teacher, and Amelia Ellison, who was her mentor. Welcome, both of you. How are you guys doing today?
I'm
Great.
Jillian, tell us about yourself.
Let's see. I don't know. I am a middle school math and science teacher. I moved to Georgia probably 5 years ago from Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
I actually never in a million years thought I would be a teacher. I didn't see it. I was that problem child for sure.
Wow.
Yes. I
Wait,
think
can you tell us what that, can you give us a little detail? What made child?
I used to tell my teachers that those who can't keep. Like, who is that person? It was.
Jillian.
I know. I know. I was defiant for sure. I think my attendance was more in the student parking lot than it was in the building. But I grew up for sure. No, my original, so I went to college. I wanted to get working in the hospital. I have a health science degree for my undergrad. Then COVID hit, and working in the hospital during COVID made me realize that I don't want to work in a hospital at all.
So, Miss Amelia, tell us about your journey into teaching and your journey into the great grant.
So, as Jillian shared, I also took a non-traditional route into teaching. So we have something in common there. Originally, I was a business major. I wanted to get into the medical field, just in the healthcare administration side. Came back home to Waynesboro, Georgia. Decided that that was not the route for me. So I took a non-traditional route. It's called the Masters of Arts in Teaching program. So I got my master's within a 2-year time frame. Students out here at Burke County Middle School, and I've been here ever since. Had a real passion for kids. From the onset,
Jillian, you spent a year under the wing of Amelia, and then you took your own classroom. So, from the perspective of a new teacher, what do you think is the hardest part about becoming a new teacher? I remember as a new teacher for myself, they gave me a key and said, "Go get him, Tiger." For yourself, who had a lot of support, what was really hard for you?
I did have a lot of support, but it's still overwhelming. It is. Because even as when I was in Ellison's classroom, being a resident, I still had her in there. So if I messed up, if I stumbled, she could easily kind of take the reins and catch me back up. Whereas you're in your own classroom and, oh gosh, like I'm responsible for all these kids by myself. I'm just here. And I think another big struggle was Ellison is a math teacher. Now I'm certified in both, but the open position was science. So it was like all of my year of training on how to teach 7th grade math didn't work out for me, unfortunately. So I had to completely switch roles into life science. And so it was like coming up with an entire new curriculum by myself. But I still had all the new teacher problems, but I guess had an advantage of, okay, well, like here, I was able to watch somebody with classroom management. I was able to see how a classroom is ran. I was able to see if something goes wrong, like my world's not going to end. We're just going to scratch it and try something new that day. So I think it was still overwhelming for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I have a very much of a go with the flow personality.
Yeah.
And I'm very much of I'm just going to shrug my shoulders at certain things. So I think that also helped me, where I didn't feel as nervous as per se maybe a new teacher would feel. But I definitely felt overwhelmed because I take everything personally.
Oh, wow. That can be very dangerous. That sounds like a problem in a middle school.
Oh, it's terrible.
That's about
My feelings get hurt.
That's about the worst trait you could have in a middle school.
For sure. My feelings get hurt often.
So you spent a year doing math with Amelia, and now you're a science teacher.
Yes.
Okay. So is she still your mentor?
She is.
So, Amelia, can you talk about how you currently work with Jillian as a mentor teacher to help her thrive in her classroom? What kind of things are you doing to support her?
So in the support aspect, I am not a science teacher, but I do support her in things like classroom management, encouragement. Like she says, she can sometimes overthink things and take things like far out there. So one of my things is a strong support system for her. The awesome thing is we're right beside each other. So if she has a meltdown, I'm like literally right here if she needs anything. So that's one of my main roles. With content, even though I'm not as hands-on, when we're moving into new initiatives, I'm there to support her. She's young, vibrant, and has great ideas. And I encourage her not to allow, sometimes veteran teachers can kind of discourage you. So because she has some awesome ideas, I encourage her to go with them.
Yeah.
Because I have that mindset. She taught me so much in my classroom. Being a veteran teacher, she taught me some things that I probably would have never tried without having that new perspective. So just encouraging her to keep moving forward with those new perspectives, those new ideas, and the things that she's learned through her training with the teacher induction program, to continue doing those things and being that strong support system. That's my primary role as her mentor this year.
What would you say that you learned in that residency year that was critical? Like that has led to you being successful, Jillian? Are there some specific, if you look back and you're like, these are the things that I learned, because it can't be, it's not the math, not how to teach math, because
No.
you're not teaching math. So what were some of the key lessons that you took from that experience?
There's a couple. I think the biggest one is not everything's going to go right. So learning how to drop an idea and creating something new. I think that is my biggest one. I think a lot of new teachers, they expect this level of perfection, and it's just not going to happen ever. Whether you are a new teacher or if you've been teaching for 30 years, perfection doesn't exist in this field, unfortunately. So I think being able to just change things on the fly is something that was extremely important. Also, as a new teacher, you have a million people coming in and out of your classroom to observe you, to make sure you're doing the right thing at all times. And she taught me don't stress it. They're there. They're going to see whatever you put out. So, some days they're going to see something fantastic, and other days they're going to see you standing there and the kids are working. They only see 5 minutes of your life, not your entire lesson. So not dwelling on what they didn't see, but more so, will you give them the results so they'll get over what they saw type of mindset, I guess. She very much just, I think the greatest thing that I took out from it is more so just being calm, not stressing so much about what's happening inside, I guess, my classroom, if that makes sense. It sounds bad, but like, just going with the flow very much.
Would you say that you come into it more of a perfectionist and like feeling like you get it right the first time, and if it doesn't work out right the first time, it's something wrong with me and I shouldn't be here and I don't deserve this job and I'm a phony?
I was. I still kind of am.
Juliana?
One thing, and this is what I remember from coming in, is one part of the program and any kind of induction program with teachers that is very important is giving constructive feedback to the new teacher. So not just, this is what I saw, you need to fix it, because that's the feedback I got as a new teacher is, well, you don't have good classroom management, you need to do something about that. And then I was like,
what do I do?
So I don't know how to do that. I did everything I knew. I'm done. So within any kind of
I told him to
induction
stop
program,
talking. Okay, I'm sorry.
I know. I asked them. They didn't. I don't know what to do next, right? One thing that was very important in the GRADE program, and like I said, just with teacher induction in general, is you have got to give new teachers constructive feedback. So here's what I saw. Tell me your side of it. Like what did you experience as the teacher in the front of the room? And now let's together work on something that can help you take care of that. Here are the good things. This is what was really good. You need to keep doing this. Because I think that's another thing that new teachers don't get a lot, is they don't get that praise piece of it, that they are doing some things very well. So what are you doing well? And let's capitalize on that. But giving them the suggestions, and not just one, because that's kind of how it started with me is, well, maybe if you call their parents, that was always the first order of business, call parents, right? But there comes a time where you need to take care of it in your classroom. You cannot spend all of your time calling parents, right? So what else could you do to take care of whatever situation is going on? Instructional, classroom management, curriculum wise, whatever that issue is, you have to give them something to build on and suggestions of what to do about things.
So feedback to the new teacher, descriptive feedback, right? This is what's happening, and here's some next steps. I want to ask you, Amelia, the same question I asked Jillian. What do you feel like the most important things you learned in that residency year, right? She was the student and you were the teacher per se, but I know that I learn the most when I'm teaching somebody, and I see the content differently when I'm explaining it and walking someone through it. I would imagine that you watching someone become a teacher before your eyes probably learned a lot about what is great teaching and what works and what doesn't work. I'm wondering what sort of lessons you took away from that experience.
So some of the lessons that I took from it is to try new things. One of the things that I have struggled with is just sticking with the ordinary, sticking with what works. But Jillian, she tried new things. I mean, she would create her own posters to have around the classroom. That's something I would never do because that creative side just is not within me. But those posters were more effective than, something I just randomly purchased from a store and things like that. So just taking risks in that area, being more in tune to what the kids have going on. She had a very good knack for if a kid had something. I was always that teacher that had a caring spirit, but I didn't go deeper than that. I wouldn't be as supportive. She was more of a nurturer than I was. Made me feel like I needed to do much more. From the educational aspect and the teaching aspect is to just, like I said earlier, don't be afraid to try new things.
Yeah.
Be open to change. Be open to the new thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what she brought out of me. Not just sticking with the old, and also more of a structure. She brought the technology aspect of structure. I would have a ton of papers to grade. She had a system. She would organize those papers, file them. Watching her systems has prepared me this year to be more systematic in my grading practices, not waiting until the last minute, using the calendar, using those things, from a technology perspective on my phone that I probably would not have used.
Yeah.
So those are some of the great things that she taught me.
And I just want to underline the thing that you said about like posters, anchor charts. It sounds like you're describing anchor charts with like key formulas or key steps that the kids can follow. She maybe had a more artistic knack to get those things and make them pretty on the wall. And
it did.
And I bet you didn't throw those away. The ones
no,
that you
it's
made.
one on my wall. It's two on my wall right now.
Smart. So I'm thinking about people out there who are mentor-mentee. Maybe they don't have the residency opportunity, but they're working, they're starting a new job and they have been assigned a mentor. What are some of the keys to making that relationship effective? I know for me, I'll just tell you my quick personal story. I became a teacher. The department chair was my mentor. And I just remember her saying, start on the chapter 1 and go to chapter 2 and chapter 3 and chapter 4. And I was like, okay, thank you. And I remember she came into my classroom one time. And other than that, I was on my own. So to help avoid that kind of situation, some agreements, roles, structures, anything that you all do regularly that you think people would be really effective for this type of relationship. Jillian?
I think the most important thing is being comfortable with your mentor. As a first-year teacher, you do need so much support. But I also feel as a first-year teacher, you are more in your shell. You're scared to talk about things. You're scared to step on toes. You're scared to voice your opinion. And I don't think you can. I think it's so important to be able to be comfortable and have that relationship, because if you, I go to Ellison's room every single day, and whether it's to vent or talk about what happened in my classroom or ask for advice, but it's because I've built a relationship with her where I feel comfortable to do so. Sometimes I'll even be like, listen, like, I'm gonna see you later. And I think that if you don't have a bond with your mentor, I don't feel like you should be ashamed or be scared of being like, hey, you know what? Like, I want the best experience with somebody who's going to help me grow into someone. So is it okay if we try somebody new? I don't see why it should be frowned upon to ask for a new mentor. Sometimes personalities just don't click. But I also don't think as a first-year teacher, you are comfortable asking for that at the same time. Like, if you don't vibe with somebody, there's no reason why they should be the person that you're supposed to turn to. Because you're not going to. And you're only selling yourself short, and you're only, I guess, holding yourself back from growth.
So as a new teacher, you need to set the expectation that you're going to have a strong mentor relationship and be willing to vocalize that. Juliana, were you going to say something?
Yes, that was fabulous. First of all, Jillian, that was one thing in the GRADE program that we really looked at a lot, was the relationship between the mentor and the novice teacher and how that was going. And behind the scenes, there were times that we had to change mentors because they did not vibe. And one thing that we found out, we did give a set of criteria for picking a mentor teacher, somebody who will listen, someone who will let a new teacher step out and take charge. They're willing to give up that control in their classroom. Okay. That's very important. And of course, that's what we thought we were going to get. And that's not what we got every time. What we got was, well, this was our teacher of the year last year, so she's going to be a great mentor. Okay. And what we found out is sometimes just because, you have all these awards behind your name, it does not mean that you are a good mentor for somebody. Some people have a set way of, this is how it's going to be in my classroom, and they can't let somebody experiment with their teaching personality. And I know that when we would have our small groups with the mentors, I talked about that a lot, is you have got to let them, these new teachers, they've got to step out, and they're going to have to fail. They have to figure things out for themselves. And so you're there to support them and say, hey, maybe this didn't work because, why don't you see if, and give them that support, and not just say, oh no, we're not going to do that because the kids were out of control and I can't have that in my classroom. And so the mentor teacher pulls back in and starts taking over again. So that relationship, exactly what Jillian was talking about, is being able to go to your mentor and share the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that they are going to support you in all three of those places and not shut you down as a new teacher with your new ideas, and you're trying to get your teacher personality set. What kind of teacher am I going to be? That they let you grow. And
can you guys just talk about what you learned in the student teaching and how you guys currently work together to help improve, I guess, both of your management, but specifically helping Jillian work on managing a classroom and especially, just being a young person, and all the traits you described yourself. Go ahead, Amelia.
So originally, Jillian didn't have any teaching responsibilities. So there was a desk in my room, and she would provide like small group support as she was observing me. So the kids got very attached to her. When it was time for her to teach, the roles shifted. So she was the primary teacher in the room. I sat at the desk and observed. I gave her that control gradually. And it was a struggle for the kids and for her because they were accustomed to being able to go to her desk and get assistance when needed. If they needed her somebody had a hole or something somewhere, she would sew something. Like, she was just like this jack of all trades. So when she became that primary teacher, the role shifted. And so it was hard for her to transition. But I wasn't that teacher that said, oh, you're doing a horrible job, as you kind of described.
Yeah.
I would allow things to happen. We would have a conversation. We would talk about how those things could change. If I saw her focusing on certain students over others, I would say, okay, how can we better, how can we work on this? So it was more of how can we improve these things? If kids have a bad day, they have a bad day. Classroom management is not going to be perfect every day. And I think a lot of times we try to, I don't want to say fool, but we try to make it seem like we're perfect teachers. So as a veteran teacher, I'm not perfect. Some days my classroom management is going to be off. I can have rules and procedures, but if a kid comes in and they're on a 10, then sometimes my procedures are not going to work. So with her seeing that I even have a bad day, it was really helpful to her. And if she had a bad day, I would say, okay, let's try again. Let's use a system that works. Let's find something that's going to work for you, because just because I do something, it doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. And I think that's critical as well. As a teacher, we cannot impose what we do on others. We have to allow them to create their own rituals and routines. We can share our ideals, but I never forced her to be Amelia. I never forced her to be me. She had to create her own set of rules, expectations for the kids. And when she was in control, I gave her complete control. If the kids said, well, Miss Degan did this, I think we had a situation where she had given a child a punishment. I said, Miss Degan is in control, not Miss Ellison. So if that's your punishment, well, not punishment. If that's what Miss Degan has decided, then that's what we're going with. So I think, too, we have to relinquish our responsibility and allow her to have control in that moment. And I think that helped with classroom management practices. And now that she has her own classroom, sometimes there's a bad day, a kid has a bad day. We don't always resort to writing the kid up, or as Juliana said, calling the parent. Sometimes that kid just has a bad day. So some days she may send a student to my room just to have a cool-off period. And I do the same for her. If one of my students need a cool-off period, we lean on each other. If a child didn't finish her test or they were having a bad day in her room and the student wasn't able to finish their science test, I'm not the science guru, but they can come into my room. I need you to cool down. I need you to work this out for her. If it's a math issue, if I'm out, one of my students doesn't understand something, they can go to Miss Degan and get help. So we have this two-way street here when it comes to management, and I'm there to support her and she's there to support me.
Jillian, when you were in her classroom watching her, what were some of the key things that you saw her do that you really stood out as like effective classroom management practices, especially as someone who subbed but didn't go to teacher school, right? Hadn't been prepping to be a teacher for a while. This was your school. What were some of the main lessons you learned from watching her day in and day out?
I think like one of my biggest takeaways is observing like the children, whether they're having a bad day or not, and not necessarily my go-to being so much to write up a kid or call a parent. Like she said, I think she taught me more so how to not so much, I don't want to say rely on like the system set in place, but she taught me more so to take control. It's my classroom, like my consequences of things or my idea on how I need to fix it doesn't always have to be what is set in stone in the book. Like I do have the autonomy in my classroom to handle situations how I need to handle them. And I think, like, for example, like Miss Ellison, she keeps a clipboard with all the kids' names on it. And she puts tallies and comments and stuff. Now, I know it was never going to work for me.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
I am somebody that if it is out of sight, it is out of mind. Will not think about it.
Yeah.
So unless I was walking around with a clipboard in my hand,
right,
all times and focused on it, it wasn't going to work. But I also took away so much so of there are going to be days where, okay, like you just need to cool down. So am I going to get mad at the kid sleeping in the back of the room? If it's an everyday thing, maybe. But if today they're sleeping, okay, we'll catch them up tomorrow, and not so much nitpick and micromanage everything. Because I think that also becomes too much for the kids.
Yeah.
Learn that if kids like you, they'll provide work for you. And if kids don't so much like you, they're just going to sit there, shut down, and do absolutely nothing. So I think as just classroom management is more being in tuned with my students, knowing how they act, what behaviors are different than normal, and just kind of focusing on that and realizing that it's okay to rely on other teachers. Hey, if you're disrupting my classroom, maybe you won't disrupt somebody else's. Like, we're going to just, like she said, take cool down period, and we'll go somewhere else and sort it from there, I guess.
What's interesting about what both of you were saying is that you're viewing classroom management as a relationship between you and the individual students, and understanding who they are and responding to them, which is a little different than what I often think about, especially in middle school, where I often think of classroom management more about processes and procedures, right? How we walk into the classroom, how we take out our papers, how we do group work, how we transition from one group to the next, how we leave the classroom, and how we ask to use the bathroom. Like, all of these procedures, to me, in my mind, are what is the most critical part of learning to be a teacher. And what you're describing is a little different, is more of the emotional intelligence of teaching. I'm just wondering, like, where that balance is for you is in terms of those two approaches and the way that you learned from each other.
Our school has more of a high school approach. So our students don't transition like your your typical middle school.
Mm-hmm.
We transition on more of a high school style. So our classes are departmentalized. They're on the same hallway, which is the difference. So 7th grade hall is the hallway, but all of the math teachers are grouped together, science, so forth and so on. So our kids don't walk in single file lines to classes. They don't walk to the restroom in a single file line. So I think that is the shift for us. We started this, I want to say maybe a year before Jillian came to Burke County Middle School. So it was kind of fresh then. So when it comes to those classroom management procedures, they are similar as you described, but our hallway management is a bit different. So you won't see our kids standing outside in line. They come directly into class. So when it comes to those typical management aspects, we do focus on our group work. I'll say, I think Jillian and I both have we have a seating chart, but then we also have an idea of, okay, in certain classes, you have the autonomy to choose your seat. But when it becomes a disruptive manner, then we move to our seating chart. When it comes to grouping, we still use those strategies from data to drive where our students sit when we're doing group work and things of that nature. And those policies and procedures are still set in stone. But some of those other things that you mentioned, as far as our hallway policies and procedures, they're a bit different at our school because it's kind of similar to the junior high model in that respect.
Yeah, you give them a little more freedom and a little more autonomy.
Mm-hmm. And they have that autonomy in the classroom when it's seat work, I think, for both of us. But you lose that if your class cannot perform in the capacity that they need to. So you have the option to sit by your friend in class. But if it becomes too much, then we move to that seating chart.
I want to nerd out a little bit on teaching practices, just as our final topic. What lesson design ideas and practices, Jillian, did you learn that first year that are a big part of your classroom in terms of, okay, I got to teach cell structure. I got to teach, geology or, tectonic plates. I don't know what science you're teaching, but I'm teaching this topic. I spent this much time in a math class, but what fundamentals of great teaching and how to design a great lesson for learning did you pull from that time is really important part of how you teach today?
I think group work. I hate, that's a strong word, but I hate group work. I do.
That's funny.
I really do.
Yeah.
I think
Okay,
I
tell me why.
struggle
Tell me a little bit more. Yeah. Why do you hate group work?
because, well, I'm somebody that enjoys control. I don't know if you've noticed that in this last hour or not, but
Yeah.
I do. So I think when it's like group work, I get so fixated on, I guess, helping the students, whereas I struggle to let them productively struggle. And Ellison taught me it's okay. Like, it's okay if they're over here sitting next to somebody and they are teaching somebody, say, wrong in that group. Because in a group, if one person's teaching someone else wrong, then, just wait. If you wait, another student's going to chime and be like, oh, no, like, this is how you do it. But by listening to their group and struggle, and even if they're, say, teaching it wrong, like, now you're learning misconceptions. You're learning their thought process on things. So I think, I don't know how to per se put it into words, but I think that is probably one of the biggest things as I took away is letting them work in groups, letting them productively struggle with one another, letting them have their misconceptions to, I would say, to a point, because it's only going to help you learn where your weaknesses are, where your shortcomings are, what you need to remediate, what you need to rephrase for them, because you might have phrased it and it made perfect sense in your mind. And it might have made perfect sense in 10 out of 15 students you have in your classroom. But those other 5 took it a completely different way. And you're never going to learn that way if you don't let them sit and talk about it with other students. And I think that's where
Okay.
now you have to.
So letting students have productive struggle, letting them get it wrong, and lean on each other.
Yeah.
And allowing that, being patient. So I do want us to close with just what type of advice would you give a team of teachers who are about to work together as a new teacher and a mentor teacher? What if you were to, someone's come to your school and they're first starting and they're like, I just got Mrs. Johnson as my mentor. I hope it works out. Anything, what should I keep in mind to make this work? What would you say to that teacher?
I would say that it's important to have a clear line of communication. That's one of the key things. Confidentiality is also important. When your mentee feels like they can trust you, because sometimes she told me things that it wasn't for me to go tell admin. I needed to kind of have that conversation with her, and let's hash it out. Some things didn't need to be shared with others. Having a sense, a norm with one another that we're going to work through this, we're going to work together. If it doesn't work in that aspect, then we'll move forward where it needs to go. But that mentee needs to feel like they're not only supported, but that they can trust you. If I'm going around saying, oh, I have this new teacher and she's not doing her job, and it gets back to her, that's going to be a big deal. Or if I'm in the classroom saying, well, Miss Degan is not doing what she's supposed to do, class, so we're going to have to switch it differently. So your response and your tone toward that mentee is going to affect the adults in the building as well as the students in your classroom. Because if they feel like you don't care for that mentee, then they're going to have that same energy when it's that person's time to teach or take control of that classroom. So that relationship has to be there, and they have to feel like they can trust you and that they're supported. So those are my key things: support
Excellent.
and trust.
Jillian?
Along with what she said, I think you get what you give. So if you go into the mindset of, like, when I went into Miss Ellison's classroom, when I first walked in, I felt like the biggest burden. I won't lie. I walked in, I was like, I'm a burden. I'm a warm
Why
body
am
in
I
her
here?
classroom. This is uncomfortable. She didn't even know I was coming. But I got out of my own mental space. And then that's when, once I really truly started opening up to her and asking her questions and venting and just fully like letting my trust into her, I guess that's when I really started getting all the benefits of being a mentee. I think if you're closed off and you're not willing to expose yourself, whether it be, hey, Ellison, today's a rough day. Just a heads up, where she's okay, like I'm going to pick up the slack here, or hey, like this is how you can work around it in your classroom. Or if you're not willing to have those hard conversations, personal, your failures in the classroom, like you're not going to gain any knowledge. You really have to be open-minded and fully entrust who you're working with. I also think speaking up, like I said earlier, is huge. If you don't feel comfortable with your mentor teacher, there's no reason for them to be working with you throughout the year. It's not going to go anywhere. You're not going to get the benefits of what having a mentor-mentee relationship is supposed to be.
Yeah. Juliana, you get the last word. What from SREB's teacher induction framework, what are some keys that new teachers and mentor teachers should keep in mind when working together?
Well, first of all, support needs to be more than a year. Always. I don't know about you guys, but I know that it took me probably 5 years before I really felt comfortable without needing that support. But we do suggest, based on our framework, at least 2 years. We also say that you need multiple layers of support. It's not just somebody the mentor's job is not just to tell you how to use the copy machine, how to fill out a field trip request form. That's not what a true mentorship is about. That is part of it, because we all need help with that. Who do I go to if I want to buy supplies for my science class? How do I get the money for that? Those are all great things, but you need somebody, like Jillian said, that you have a relationship with, that you can go to in times of stress. So you need that just-in-time support. That is a big thing that SREB talks about, is just-in-time support. I had a really bad day and I need to talk to somebody right now. Not a week later when I've kind of forgotten about it, or it's not that big of a deal, but now when I'm in the moment with it. But then you also have structured support time where you're talking about instructional strategies. You're talking about classroom management. You're talking about all of the stuff that teachers have to do throughout the day. So there's multiple layers of support throughout, and that mentor is there to help bridge the gap for that new teacher to get them to the other side of, now I'm comfortable, now I can stand up in front of 30 children with 60 eyes staring at me, and it's not as big of a deal as it was on the first day. That they are there to support, always.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys, and we appreciate your time and all that you're doing for Burke County Middle School students, and we look forward to staying in touch with you and hearing about all the great things in both of your futures. So Thank you all, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you for listening to this episode brought to you by the Southern Regional Education Board. SREB is a nonprofit dedicated to improving education from pre-K all the way to PhD and into the workforce. Visit sreb.org for resources on instructional practices, teacher data, career pathways, and more. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook at SREB-School Improvement and on Twitter/X and Instagram, both at SREB Education. See you next week.